we're going to start letting anyone that is joining right now just go ahead and filter in. Usually takes a couple minutes depending on how Zoom goes, and if people are trying to log in right now, it usually takes just a couple minutes for it to kind of let you into the room, so we'll give you a minute. I want to thank everybody for joining us again today for the third day of Customer Week. It's been a lot of fun so far. If you've missed out on anything that we've had in the last couple days, I'd really encourage you to go and go to ezoic.com/customer-week-2023. And I'm sure you can find an email with that link in there if you didn't get all of that. And we've had recordings for the last 2 days for both our opening webinar, where we talked a little bit about the future and the roadmap of some of the things that you can expect, and some of the ways that we want to support our publishers and customers. And yesterday, we talked a little bit more about Niche IQ. And that's something that I think I told everybody on the call yesterday. If you don't know, now you know. And I think we'll have some more resources out later this week to maybe demonstrate exactly why I think it's a game changer for our customers. But as we kind of get started today, I'll go ahead and introduce my guest, maybe more well known to some of our some of the people joining today than just about anybody inside of Ezoic, because you are our Director of Publisher Success. Welcome, Jeff Bernard.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me, Tyler. Glad to be here.
So you probably interact with, in terms of the scale and breadth of folks using Ezoic, as much as anybody. So I guess, I would say that from the past couple years, what has been something that has, maybe surprised you about working with Ezoic customers?
First of all, I very much enjoy working with these customers and publishers. I think what's surprising for me is really the scope of our clientele and of our publishers. So we work with over 30,000 publishers, and they're from all over the world. I mean, you name a country, you name an area, we've got somebody from there. So it's just been great to get to know a diverse set of publishers and really help them along their way as they're learning the game, or if they're a veteran and have been around for a long time, helping them take their business to the next level. So,
and maybe you could fill everybody in a little bit more about your background, because I know that one of the things that has really been an asset to our customer base has really been sort of your breadth of experience and realistically sort of the exposure and the time that you've been doing this job here at Ezoic. And I know that that's something that our organization has benefited from, but I think people will see today as well that I think all of our customers are going to continue to benefit from as we roll out new efforts in terms of services.
Yeah, I mean, my background in publishing and really ad ops goes pretty deep, to be honest. My first job out of school, I was an advertising sales rep. And it was so long ago that I was actually selling advertising in print media.
Printable websites.
Yeah, printable websites. That's exactly what it was. And so I started when there was print, and I worked with and I worked with a lot of brands as they were transitioning from print to digital. So I got to see that entire just change of the ecosystem, which was great. I'm really not that old, but I was very, very young getting out of college, obviously.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, there's probably never been a better time in terms of, as you can kind of see our characters up here on the screen. Your video game character, I think, is a little bit more accurate than mine in terms of likeness, but, AI is doing some pretty incredible things, and that's what I was going to say is, what an elegant way to sort of like tell the story of, you were helping, print publishers in the transition to digital, and now digital publishing is transitioning. We just, I don't know that anybody could say exactly how. I think we have some evidence as to maybe what types of things are going to be the disruptors, but we don't really know what the future looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I'd say this time and an era reminds me of like the late 2000s, like 2007, 2008. There's a lot of new, cool, disruptive technology that's out there. I think our audiences are consuming content in different ways. I've got two boys in high school, and these guys are on their phone and it's like video after video after video,
Yeah.
right? So I see it and I live it, but I think it's to me it's exciting. It's I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity in the next
Yeah.
handful of years, and it's really just a matter of understanding the content you're creating and who's consuming it and how are they going to consume it, and how do we then make some money doing it,
Yeah, and I think I mentioned yesterday on our webinar with Gerald, and one of the things that I think it's important for our publishers to understand, and I know that you feel this way, and I think from just about everybody in the building that's been in this industry for a long time, if you're an Ezoic customer, if you're a digital publisher right now, you are in a great position, and a position where there is immense opportunity, and I think that there's a chance that you can really come out over the next 5 to 10 years on the digital side as being somebody that's way ahead, could come out further along than you could if things were to continue under their current sort of like environment. And I think the key there is really understanding and executing on sort of like the right things. And that's hopefully something that we can put publishers in position for. And that's one of the things we try to do is curate questions from our customers around things that they maybe are uncertain about, questions that they have about Ezoic and how we are supporting both from a technology standpoint, which hopefully we've been able to get into a little bit earlier this week and will later on, but really from the services, how we support our customers standpoint. And so I guess one of the, this is like a paramount sort of question I think publishers just wonder at all, especially whenever you talk about Ezoic, because I think most of our customers' Ezoic is either ads or revenue. And because of that, I think one of the fair questions that we probably get a lot of publishers ask in general is, how can you be sure that you're getting a fair value for your content or your website in terms of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a loaded question. There's many
Yeah.
different directions you could take that. I think for me, when I see that, I think what's really important is, just understanding your content, understanding why you're creating it, who you're creating it for, who's consuming it. And then I'd like to, think of like tying it to the types of brands that may be trying to get out in front of that type of audience. That's going to really help drive, I'd say, like the value and the value of the content. It's understanding who you're creating content for and why, and then what type of brands are going to be able to want to get in front of that audience. And I think the other piece that I think about with that is, I think especially as you're growing, I think it's important to have the ability to just assess your content and use data to look at different types of content and see what content is producing well and why, and then being able to pivot and adjust your strategy to make sure you're going towards creating things that are going to help you accomplish your goals as a publisher.
And I think, one of the things that Gerald mentioned yesterday, who was the data scientist that we had kind of walking us through Niche IQ, was when we were looking at competitor analysis, he's like, you'll notice that, the percentage of overlap in both topics, keywords, even from your top 1,000 competitors, he's like, this is not unique to the site that we were looking at, but, 6% overlap might be your, largest competitor, and it may be somebody like Wikipedia. And so you can look at that and say, well, look, should I make as much as this site or that site? But realistically, the most similar sites may still only have like 10% similarity in terms of the content that's actually on the site. So how would you go about maybe establishing sort of like a baseline for like, just what data do you need to collect so that you have an idea of like where those benchmarks could be for your site?
Yeah, I mean, we say it all the time, and you'll see it on social or if you're working with one of our success managers, but all sites are different. There are no two sites that are the same. There might be some content that is similar or overlaps, it's relatable, but there's going to be other content on sites that is drastically different. So for me, I think it's understanding like the sort of the scope of your niche, or certain types of content pieces, understanding like who is producing content in that similar way. Are there brands that are doing it? Are there other niche publishers that are doing it? How big is that pie? and then using things like niche IQ or SEO tools to understand like the opportunity within those types of topics, keywords, whatever you want to call them. So you can assess the size of essentially the market that you're trying to get your content out in front of. And then it kind of gives you data of like how to pivot and how to go down different, like, I guess, related topics to then open up your pie. But at the end of the day, in certain areas, there's only so much traffic in certain topics. And so, you know, it's capitalizing on that and knowing who you're trying to like sort of siphon some from if you can.
Yeah, and I find that, this sort of like analysis and data that you can get as a publisher, it's kind of like, it's similar to whenever you get an answer from somebody that's really an expert in something, is always it's depends, but it's always getting more granular. There's not a lot of really great broad signals, but I will plug the fact that we updated the ad revenue index recently and added the niche revenue index to that as well. So now you can actually drill down and see, like the ad revenue index trends by niche as well. I call it niche. I'm from the Midwest in the United States, so sorry everybody.
It's definitely niche.
Sure. Yeah. What else would it be?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things with that is that even at best, as accurate as something like that is, all it's able to do is really give you a directional, seasonal component of if your ad revenue is maybe dipping 1 month versus the previous. Can you look at the index and say, okay, well, maybe it's seasonal, maybe it's everyone in my niche, or maybe there's something I need to dig in deeper to. But that leads me to my next question, which is, how do you balance essentially that sort of like equation of creating content for revenue or creating, spending time on how do I, extract greater value from my content to actually the product itself? I've heard you say before is, your content is your product and your customers are your visitors.
Yeah, I mean, balancing the two is definitely easier said than done. I think it really depends on probably the state of your business or like where you are as a publisher or a content creator. If you're newer, at the end of the day, you just need to get content out there. You need to establish like your authority and establish who you are and what kind of content you're going to be creating and what your site is all about. You're trying to get it to rank. You're trying to get people to consume your content. So, early on, I definitely think you want to like devalue money a little bit and focus more on just the quality of content, the type of content you're producing. The money will then, sort of follow. But as you go from like getting going and sort of side hustling to becoming full time, obviously you've got to make money, and but you're at that point you're going to have enough experience, enough data behind you, and to have a good idea of how that content is producing for you, and it'll guide you into where you want to go. I think at the end of the day, it's really about good content that people are looking for. Understanding how big the market is going to be in that content. If you're producing something that's very finite, like super niche, like you're going to cap out at some point. There's also on the flip side is there's a lot of very, very large publishers who may own their niche and own their space. And they might be in a different position where it's almost a defensive play at that point. It's how do I keep my traffic at this level? How do I keep my revenue? How do I create content that ensures that I stay at that top spot, or as the elite publisher in that space? So again, it depends on where you're at, but it's definitely a balance. If you're focusing on content and the consumer, I think long term that's always going to win. And revenue is going to follow. And I'll go back to the indexes, but I think those are key too, is understanding the seasonality and even seasonality for your content.
Yeah.
There's not just seasonality for the industry. Well, there is seasonality for the industry, but there's seasonality depending on the content that you're producing. If it's football content, if it's baseball content, if it's summer food content, if it's travel content, like when are people going to be looking at that and why, and know that that's going to impact like your money throughout the year.
Yeah. Is actually interesting example. Someone on your team the other day had asked me to take a look at a site when I was passing through the office, and I looked at it, and they were trying to compare two sites, and they were on a particular popular mobile technology. And both the sites, seemingly are on generally the same subject. You wouldn't imagine there'd be a lot of variability there. And you could see actually like this sort of like transition to a month where one was up and the other was down. And it was kind of like, I wonder wonder exactly why that is. And, there wasn't a great explanation. But then when we went and looked at the content categories inside of analytics, we were able to see that, one, most of their content getting traffic and earning revenue, like significant revenue, were reviews. And then the other one were covering more so sort of like trends, what maybe is on the roadmap for the technology. And so they'd recently just had their big event where they kind of announced a lot of the new stuff that was out. So transitioning away from sort of like the rumor mill of what are they going to announce to they've announced it, like let's review it. And it's really interesting because it makes total sense when you're actually able to see it. But sometimes getting those answers is not easy. But when you know your audience and you know your content, you can usually arrive at those answers a lot faster than even somebody like us who maybe looks at sites and data all day long. That context is missing.
Yeah, I mean, I think timing of content is definitely critical. I'll think of like sports ones are funny for me is like you'll think like the NBA season's getting going right now, so you're thinking like NBA content is going to start skyrocketing. Well, when the draft happens 3 or 4 months ago, if you play your content into that, you're gonna skyrocket as well. So I think it totally, yeah, it just depends on when you're producing and why, and then how do you get that content based on what's being released and how people want to read about it. If that makes sense.
And I think, that you brought up a good point of, I think it's always easy to hear the make great content, know your audience, but it's so true because I think when that is your focus, all the other things become sort of like opportunistic, sort of like, oh, I have an idea, let me try to do this or that to try to influence revenue or capitalize on a content opportunity. But if you start with that and you put your audience second, you may miss out on like the NBA trends or like what seasonal components can you maybe take advantage of as opposed to always seeing it as something like a risk. And so that's something that I've seen publishers both struggle with, but like to your point, I've also seen publishers really thrive at. What's something that sites all seem to maybe struggle with, or what's a challenge that they all seem to be having right now?
Outside of dealing with the last 4 weeks of Google, which is obviously probably the main topic for many. I think it depends on the publisher and again where you are in your experience. So I think as you get going into content creation, I think there's going to be a big learning curve. There's a lot of technologies that are out there. There's a lot of tools that are at play that you have to get used to and learn how they are going to become part of your everyday tool set to do business. Whether it's keyword tools, whether it's different hosts to use, how do those hosts play with like your speed strategies. So I think there's a learning curve in the early phase, and then I think again as you get further along, it's controlling what you can and other things that you can't control. You kind of have to like let it go, but still like learn how to, I guess, sort of like try to have some control with it. But so yeah, I think it's understanding the different things that are happening in the ecosystem. So like, I guess we can go to like the algorithm update recently, but it's like, are ads impacting this? I mean, I don't think so, but some might say yes. So it depends on the site, right? So don't just jump to a conclusion. Like, look at your site, look at all the data, look at what's happening, and then make some decisions. But don't just rashly like jump to something and say, this is it. Oh my God, this is like what's happening. Like, it may or may not be.
I can contest that we've looked at every update across our spectrum of publishers, which, even with hundreds of thousands of sites worth of data, that's not even a good enough sample size to draw a conclusion from something as broad as a Google update. But
Yeah.
It's certainly better than, like a forum with 5 or 6 other sites on it. And I think one of the things that we've seen consistently, and this is pretty much without exception, there was one actually in 2020 that was the only one that kind of bucked the trend where we saw publishers more significantly impacted negatively than positively. But normally what we see is about 60% in the middle, unaffected, 20% on both sides, sort of positive and negative, usually about a 1 to 4% change that's noticeable over a course of 2 to 3 months. So in most cases, if you actually zoom out 2 to 3 months, you pick a time whenever there's an update, you look month and a half on one side, month and a half on the other side, you see no difference.
Yeah, there's definitely like a pause phase. Like when things change, sometimes you got to like let the dust settle
Yeah.
and just let things sort of like naturally happen, and then you'll start uncovering like what was real versus what was not, and then you can start putting strategies in place to help improve your, the direction that you're trying to go.
I can say consistently over the last 10 years, the number one thing that I've seen impact publishers from Google algorithm updates are actions that they have taken in response to being things that absolutely you can identify and without a shadow of a doubt say this negatively impacted the site. And so that's where I always just try to give caution, because I've seen people react on a day's worth of data, 2 days worth of data, a week's worth of data, and make decisions or changes that do have far-reaching effects long term. And you really are better off sort of kind of giving it a more sort of broadened view. And the exception to that, I would say, is if, you've basically been chucking out a bunch of low quality content out there, in which case, like, you're kind of getting your answer, make better content, which, this is to the point I think you mentioned before about publishers needing to, give up control or navigating all the different disciplines you have to be good at. Artificial intelligence kind of lands itself right smack dab in the middle of that conversation.
Sure.
And I think a lot of publishers right now are sort of challenged with the idea of what do I do with this?
Yeah, I'd say embrace it and use it as your friend. I don't think it's going to be replacing absolutely everything, but it's going to have a place in all of our lives, whether you're consuming content or whether you're creating. I think it's really about using it as a way to become more efficient. You can use artificial intelligence or GPT to help you with outlining of your content. You can come up with new content ideas that are related to things you've been writing about. Internally, when I look at like my team, like it's helped our internal team just become way more efficient with being able to get things done, being able to write, things that we need to do internally to help educate our peers. But yeah, I'd be embracing it and figuring out how to use it as a strategy for me to grow my business long term.
I was trying to get the slide. There we go. But one of the things that I think, stuck out to me that Gerald had said yesterday that I really enjoyed, actually, I don't think he said this on the air. He said this to me afterwards, because we were going through the deck, and one of the questions in there was, what's the greatest risk related to AI? And he said, well, there's no risk. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, a risk would assume that there's something that's a risk to me as a website. It's not a risk to you as a competing website. And he's like, the risk would apply to everybody. And he's like, the risk for AI is humanity or, the internet or whatever it is. But he's like, there's no risk to website publishers. He's like, there's a challenge. And the challenge is that my competitors will use it more adeptly than I will. And he gave some really great advice on prompting and stuff too. I'd encourage everybody to go check that out if you missed it yesterday. But he'd mentioned the idea of using AI against itself to basically ask about what's not there. So take a competitor's article that maybe you're writing a topic about, and then say, this is an article about X, Y, or Z. Tell me what's maybe missing that people would want in this article. And bam, there you have basically like this extra chunk of content that you could use to make your content better. And for the sites that have been around a long time, I find that they've got a lot of little tricks up their sleeve like this. And I think the question is for those that maybe are in the process of growing, or those that have, maybe grown to a point now where maybe they have access to some of our, level 3, level 4 VIP services. What can Ezoic do to keep them safe? Like what kinds of things should they be looking to us for? Or what kinds of things can we help them with?
Yeah, I think first thing that comes to mind to me is like the reality of 2023. It's been an interesting year in our space, disruptive technology. I think we've seen some suppression in ad spend compared to previous years. First time that things have been sort of flat versus hyper growth that we've seen in digital over the last 10 years. So I would say just initially, I think patience is important, and to have a long goal and a longer term vision of what you're trying to do with your site and your content and your business. I think Ezoic, as a partner, I think that's how we approach it. We want to deliver results today and help publishers today set themselves up for long term. But at the end of the day, we want everybody thinking like further out and thinking about like how can I build a solid infrastructure of my business today so that I can be successful down the road. So how do we help? I mean, I think there's a variety of different ways, just from the technology perspective, with the tools that we're iterating on and releasing and always improving on, whether it's Niche IQ or Flickify. I think one of the best ways our team can help publishers is just making sure they understand the value of the data that they have within big data analytics. Like, big data analytics can be your best friend. It can tell you all about your content. It can tell you and guide you where you want to go. And then when you pair it with some of the other tools, whether they're our tools like Niche IQ or Flickify or a third party, whatever, it's going to give you insights of where you want to take your business. I think from a service perspective, I think, especially on the VIP and level 4 side, like we definitely have a very diverse group of people that work with those publishers. I'd say like one of our favorite or most taken advantage of resources that we offer is direct SEO advice, and we've seen that has been a game changer for big publishers. The value that we have versus, I'd say, just like a traditional SEO is our ability to see 30,000 sites and to see how they're performing, but also to see how SEO relates to money.
Yeah.
A lot of traditional SEOs think about traffic and audience growth, but they're not tying it to the end result of like a business trying to make money. And so our team has the ability to see that, and they can give advice and give you long-term perspective on SEO that's going to drive results, but it's going to positively impact your bottom line. I love that we offer that.
I know that it's a customer favorite. I know the guys the two gentlemen that which we have a very high bar for SEO. It's a very it's a very scrutinized topic here at Ezoic, and those guys burn the midnight oil. And I know that Gerald had mentioned yesterday, a lot of what they've been able to do to really transform a lot of customers that maybe were seeing declines, or maybe even help customers, achieve really exponential levels of growth. That's what we baked into Niche IQ, and looking at data and poring over data is not always the most fun, but it's definitely time consuming. And so I know that's something that our level 4 and VIPs benefit from, but it's something that we've actually baked into Niche IQ as well, a lot of those processes. And SEO being something that's obviously something that a lot of our customers try to take advantage of because of the value. But what's something that maybe doesn't get taken advantage of enough that you think that our team provides in terms of both services or in terms of ways that we can help, or things that customers maybe are missing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of depends on the publisher. There are publishers that are, I'd say, slightly more extroverted, and so they're willing to jump on calls and willing to meet with our team, and they've built really solid relationships with our success managers and our support teams. There's others that might be slightly more introverted and want to work with us in a more passive way, or maybe like via email or via tickets. I'd say for me, I think it's important for publishers of all sizes to understand that we have like an extremely robust team. Our team is probably one of the most diverse teams in this space, being that we have a giant group in the US, but we also have a giant group in the UK. So we cover a lot of time zones. We speak a lot of different languages. Okay. And it's a lot of like genuinely good people that literally just want to help publishers grow their business. So for me, it's like, if you need help, it's ask for it, and just know that there is a very robust team that's there to help you out. Now, we may give you advice or may say something that you might have a different take on, but that's okay. Like, the point is having some great discourse to make sure that like you understand the situation and understand like the state of your business, so that you can make ultimately the decision. And the decision and direction of your businesses and your content strategy are yours. But take advantage of the team that we have here that has access to so many sites and gets to see stuff that a lot of publishers don't get to see because of our access. And so we're here to help, and we just want to help everybody grow their businesses. And at the end of the day, is our client's success is our success.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that is really paramount, I think, to our philosophy and our DNA, which is we're a very challenging organization from the standpoint of no one is afraid to challenge anyone else's ideas, or I think we're very objective about that internally, and I think that is part of our DNA externally as well. You mentioned sort of the idea of we may tell you something and you may disagree, and we're okay with that. I think Gerald mentioned yesterday that sometimes we may provide you the data and the direction, and you may just go, I don't want to go that way, and that's okay. The thing is that if you go with your gut, you do want to know when you're taking a lot of risks and if they're paying off versus your gut is just way off. And so having at least an expert or a counter argument to sort of help you evaluate that risk. So if you're making a lot of decisions and it seems like they're not paying off, when you're running maybe counter to statistically what is maybe a better direction. And it makes me kind of go, well, what data are publishers maybe missing sometimes that it maybe influences that sort of like intuition. So what's some data that you think maybe a lot of publishers are missing that makes them say wow once they finally get a chance to see it, or what's some kind of information or something like that that you've watched over and over again be kind of have that wow component to it?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes back to like Ezoic's like initial philosophy and who we are and what we do is when we're setting up sites, we're doing it in a way where we know that like every user that comes to the site is going to see a different experience. So we're tailoring that ad experience and that experience on the site per each individual user based on their preferences, and it's designed to generate like successful yield and also balance UX. Over time, I think sometimes we forget that and we think that everybody's seeing the same thing. This is my setup, and everybody's seeing that. At the end of the day, they're not. So I go to reporting and I say, all right, so the two reports that come to mind for me that I think I would love publishers to use more, they're in big data analytics under yield. And one is ad density, and it's understanding the ad density of your site and looking at how that pairs with your revenue and how that pairs with your UX metrics. And the other one is ads per page. I find to be one that's underutilized, but is very, very eye-opening. If you go in and you look at those, you'll have a much better understanding that 20% of your audience might see 8 ads, 20% of your audience might see 5, 20% might see 3, 5% might see 1. But it's a different experience for everybody. And when you look at that, you'll understand that like we're looking at the long game. We're looking at revenue, we're looking at delivering a unique experience, and we're balancing that with UX.
Yeah, and I would say you can challenge us on that from the standpoint of consistently over the last decade, our approach has always been one that it's just as much for the user as it is for the advertising, supply and demand. Certain visitors are worth different amounts to different advertisers based on the competition. So being able to change, the amount that is for sale in real time allows you to get the best price. And that allows you also to show fewer ads over time. So those reports you just mentioned, you can pull a date range, and you could look at, if the longer you've been using Ezoic, I would pull the longest ones you can, but look year over year, I bet you're showing a lot fewer ads than you were over the previous period. And that's pretty consistent on almost every site that I've seen that's used this long term, because when you're able to adjust the prices like that, you're actually able to get advertisers to bid more over time. And that's one of the components of using something like Ezoic, where it's like the machines have your best interest built into it so that a person can never, maybe make a decision that's aligned interest at the time, but maybe not your best interest long term. And, it's kind of speaking of long term interest, I think one of the things that is really exciting right now and something that maybe publishers are wondering about, but not necessarily sure about whether or not it's for them, is video. And I think we've got 2 great products that help with two different challenges there. But I think maybe sometimes there's a trouble understanding like what's a video ad, what's a Humix, what's a Flickify. Maybe in the simplest way possible, help our customers maybe understand how to, get into video or how to tap into video using the best way you can describe the different products that we have.
Yeah, I'll start with Flickify. I'm a big fan of Flickify. I think it makes creating video content very, very easy for publishers that are not traditional video content creators. So you can create content your normal way. You plug it into Flickify and you let Flickify do the work for you, creating the script, matching images, essentially rendering it, and then lets you basically do some basic edits. What I love about it is it helps publishers really just diversify their content because people are consuming that content in different ways. And I'll give you an example. So earlier this year in the winter time, I'm in Mammoth, I'm going snowboarding, and Mammoth is in the Sierra Nevadas in California, and like we just had the most insane winter like we've had in 10 years. Yeah. So we were getting dumped on tons of snow. And I've got a chain up. So I got to get chains on my car. And I literally haven't put chains on my car in 7 years.
I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm familiar too, but I don't know that I could do it today.
Yeah, so like I forgot. I have chains, but I'm like, all right, it's been a while. I don't want to be in the snow and like fumbling over it. It's cold and I want to get it done fast. So I'm like, all right, let's get out the phone. How do I, put chains on my car in an efficient way? And, 3-4 years ago, it's probably going to be an article that surfaces, and I'm going to go step by step on written content and look at, okay, step by step, maybe a couple photos and figure out how to do it. Well, today what's surfacing is video, right? It's literally a person doing it. It's showing up in the top of search, and it's got chapters within the video, and it allows me to literally go to skip all the BS in the front about the person creating the content and go directly to where they're putting chains on. And step by step, I go through that process, and within 2 minutes, I know how to do it, and I'm like super confident about it. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, a written publisher is somebody who is probably going to be ranking. Well, today, Google understands that people are going to be consuming that type of content via video. So if I'm a publisher, I'm trying to figure out how to do both. So I got to get my content in front of the different types of audiences to make sure I'm ranking and making sure I'm capturing that. So to me, Flickify is a great bridge to that, especially if you are not a video first publisher. It lets you basically pair and capitalize on both. And the other piece I like about it, again, it's an SEO play. At the end of the day, if you're creating, video, it gives you an opportunity to rank for text and for video.
Yeah, and I think people oftentimes see that sort of as like, well, the video is going to help my article rank. Regardless of whether it does or not, the video can rank. And that's the benefit of something like Humix that's not only getting shared across, the Humix network, but it gets indexed in search as a separate entity. Google's search engine is the largest in the world. The second largest search engine actually isn't YouTube, it's video and images, which is a separate Google search engine. And then you also have YouTube. And I think the thing that's interesting with something like Flickify is AI. We talked about it in the opening webinar. It's incredible the new capabilities it has every day. I mean, you can go out and find other things that will turn text into video or allow you to create video relatively easily. Flickify, in particular for an Ezoic customer, Flickify was designed to turn content articles into video. And you'll find that everything about the user interface and the media libraries and stuff like that are provided within it are designed specifically to help you take your content and make it into video so you can double dip like that. And I know that you've seen a lot of customers that have been able to utilize both of those tools. What kind of opportunities have you seen people capitalize on? What should somebody expect if they're like, cool, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to start, creating some videos and utilizing something like Humix to get them out there.
Yeah, I think first thing I would do is I'd go look in big data analytics and I'd look at your pages that are generating the most traffic and most money for you. And then I'd be looking at how you've built those pages, and I'd consider going and creating video for those pages. So on your top ranking pieces and your top monetized piece, create video using Flickify, or if you have another third-party tool that you like, go for it. but expand in that and then use that to help you rank and drive additional traffic. And then, outside of that, then you can share that within the Humix network, and you're going to be able to drive some additional eyeballs and get your brand out there and get more people that are coming to your content and consuming your content. It's only going to help. And if you have content pieces that, aren't really monetizing well, don't have a ton of traffic, like, to me, it's, you can share a similar video on that page. It's going to help keep the people that are coming to that page, on that page. And as that page starts ranking or doing better, then it's like decide when it's time for you to create that video for yourself on that page.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of creating content, sharing content amongst the network, but also understanding, again, your goals. If you have pages that are doing really, really well, like, you should be diversifying that and owning that piece and using that to drive traffic and SEO and money.
And I think one of the things that I would add to that is, even if you have articles that maybe are underperforming from a revenue standpoint but get lots of traffic, with the Bucks Universal player, like, the ability to add video to that page now and see the revenue come up, to me, it's a no-brainer. And so I would say that that's definitely another opportunity that publishers should be looking at. And I think one of the things that always stands out to me is how good some of the people on your team are at kind of identifying those things. The universal player on the pages that get lots of traffic seems obvious, not maybe something that I'm always looking at, but the people in our building seem to never miss that. So I guess one of the questions is, how good are some of these people? I mean, I'll give you a chance to brag about them a little bit, but yeah, maybe pull back the curtain a little bit there so that people can maybe understand some of the folks working behind the scenes on their sites are quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate. So I've been at Ezoic for 5 years, and I've had my hand in sort of like scaling out our customer success team. So most people that are client facing probably work within my organization. And I'm super proud of the group that we have. I think it's a very smart, diverse group. A lot of experience in publishing, and we have, like I said earlier on, access to so much data and access to so many different sites that our learning curve is very, very fast for our team members. When we look at those that are working with VIP publishers, they're extremely skilled. They're data nerds. They understand how to look at data, how to help guide publishers to use that data. They understand how to look at yield and how to balance yield with the overall goals of the individual site, to make sure that, the UX is looking good and the goals are there. So it's a lot of very passionate people that spend a lot of time looking at sites and setting up sites, or looking at data and looking at traffic and helping guide. So, super cool. And we're proud that we work in, I think it's 5 languages right now: German, French, Spanish, Croatian, and obviously English. There's probably a few others that we have as well with the diverse group we have.
Yeah, and it always surprises me too. Like, we'll have members of the team, especially in our UK office, where they'll be from Italy, but they'll speak Russian, but then you find out they grew up in like Korea. It's like a very diverse group that does sort of have like these backgrounds that are really helpful for our clientele, because they really are global. Like you said earlier, it's like you'd be hard pressed to find a country where we don't have a publisher.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like, I love the fact that we're inclusive, and I'll use that as, like, we are built to help publishers of all sizes. Everybody needs opportunities to get access to great tech and to help them like build their business. And I love that that's, core within Ezoic and who we are. And I love the fact that we support that by like hiring a diverse group of people, a very robust skill set, from techie folks to more like content creator folks to diverse languages, from SEO experts to yield experts, and really just putting all that together to just help create a good experience and help guide publishers to continue to grow regardless of their size. So it's awesome. Like, I love that that's who we are. And I just hope that we can continue to, get that out there to publishers and let them know like what resources they have and what kind of team they have here to support them. And we take a lot of pride in what we do, and we're backed by great technology, and we've got great tools that we continuously build upon to then roll out. And it's all really about helping publishers, write and create great content, help it, rank and get traffic, and at the end of the day, then make some money from it.
And I liked what you said about kind of guiding, because I think that that's fundamental to the direction. And one of the reasons why I think we've continued steady growth over the years, and in a space that's known for volatility. And it's because I think our approach has always been to help equip publishers with everything they need to run their site as whatever their goal is, to run it as the CEO of that, and to not have to rely necessarily on us as a partner to do everything for them. It's the idea that we want to be able to make sure that everything that you need done is accomplished exactly the way that you would imagine. So you can use AI now in many ways to be a staff, but in the same token that you could have used AI before, you could have potentially used, tools to set up and run something the way that you would imagine now. Maybe there's a learning component to that, but it makes your business better. And I think that that's sort of the role of our services over time, is to, really take publishers from whether they're just starting or maybe already established and say, hey, we're going to make sure that the goals that you have, that you stay on track with our, both our tools and the knowledge that we have in the space. But it does beg the question of, people want to know that they're in good hands a lot of times. And I think that that's why having a partner makes this journey, which is oftentimes kind of lonely as a publisher. I used to always say at our events, like, publishing sometimes means you're sitting alone in front of a computer a lot. And I guess that leads sometimes to just this uncertainty. Am I on the right track? So, the last question I have is, what didn't get asked that maybe people should take away from this, or what's something they should be thinking about that maybe, they're going, I knew it. I knew I was missing something. That's what it is.
Well, first thing, if you don't know something, just ask. Again, big team here that's ready to answer questions and be there to support you in any of our forums. We've come a long way with how we've redesigned our support interface this year, which we're really proud of, and I think it's awesome to have publishers to be able to log in and see what support resources are there for them. We have so much content and so many tools that I'd love to see them get used more, even just like our ChatGPT support pop-up. Like, we've been training it for a year. It guides publishers and answers questions like insanely well. Take advantage of it. We do the weekly walkthroughs every Wednesday. We've got 200 of those that we've done. We've been doing them for 3 years.
They're really good, actually.
I don't know that we've missed a day. Maybe we've missed one or two. I guess we're not doing it today because this one counts as that. But there's 200 videos there that are there for publishers to consume and to learn about. So you can search for it based on your interest and what questions you have, and take advantage of that. There's a lot of things with our level 1 group where there's classes and teaching them how to set up ads, how to really get started in publishing. So, I'd say cruise around that, check out, the webinars, check out the content pieces, ask questions, network within the community. Our community right now is, primarily, I'd say, like level 1, but, so we're hoping to get more publishers in there and interacting amongst each other and helping each other out and asking questions and giving advice and strategies. But beyond that, there's a group of 10 plus people that Ezoic staffers that are in the community that are answering direct questions and helping publishers with whatever goals that they have. Yeah, and then if you're working with one of the success managers, it's make sure they understand your goals, make sure that they know what you're trying to accomplish, and I assure you that they will work in your best interests, and they will work in partnership with you to help you achieve your goals. At the end of the day, again, your success is our success. It's shared, and there's a lot of people that want to help you out. So as long as we're aligning what we're trying to accomplish, I think we've got the technology and we've got the team that cares and will help you get there.
And I think that it can feel like sometimes that there's a lot of things that Ezoic provides or offers that, like people want to make sure that they don't miss something. And I would say that, I think just that, like being able to plug into things like the community, lean on our staff to basically find out like, hey, what are the opportunities or what technologies maybe am I not utilizing from Ezoic that could help me grow. And, Customer Week, here we are trying. I would say a big component of what we've tried to do recently is basically make the tools, the technologies more accessible, more easy to extract the value from, doing the job that the tools are designed to help you with, partially as well. And a part of that as well is simplifying the services, which we've outlined a little bit earlier this week. But if you've missed anything so far, we've got on our blog or on the Customer Week landing page, you'll find we actually have some like detailed run-throughs of some of the things that we've talked about here this week, and then also have done a pretty good job of kind of outlining what to do with that information. And I think that, I think that that's key to being able to, continue to grow in publishing. If you're on this webinar, I've told this to people before, if you're watching these types of events and content, you're probably one step ahead already, just from the standpoint of that sort of like compassion for, or I guess I would say the respect for your business to be able to say, okay, what can I do? Am I doing everything possible? Those are the sites that I usually see having a lot of success. And I want to thank you for joining us today, Jeff. And anything else before we sign off here?
No, I'm stoked that I was able to join today. And genuinely, I just want to thank all of our publishers. We appreciate the partnership that we have with you all. We want to hear your feedback, and we want to continue to help build a successful business with you all. And anything we can do, just ask. Don't be shy, and let us know how we can help you, and we'll continuously do that. Both from a human perspective, but also from a technology perspective. So again, just appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate all of our publishers and content creators worldwide. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And thanks to everyone joining, and thanks to everybody who's taking part in Customer Week. Tomorrow we do have the webinar. It's not actually it's hosted in this building. It's actually the State of Digital Publishing is doing a webinar with our own Emily Brennan to talk a little bit more about Humix. If it's something that's interesting to you and you want to grow with video, I would definitely check out that webinar. And then keep your eyes on our Customer Week landing page and on the blog, because I think we've got some things coming up that will help you sort of maybe, what is it in this that I want to capitalize on that maybe was announced that maybe I missed or whatever. We've got a lot of really great resources in there, so stay tuned, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.